let's demystify activity-based budgeting, or ABB. And to understand ABB, it's a good idea to recap traditional or incremental budgeting. This is the simple approach where when we would like to forecast the next period costs, we simply take our last period's budget or actual results, and then we use this as the starting place for the new budget, and we simply apply some new assumptions to our old numbers. For example, we might apply a forecast inflation rate to our production costs or a new estimated demand to our sales levels. In more recent years, managers and financial controllers have begun to recognize that this traditional approach is limited in a modern business, and this is when activity-based budgeting was born. Nowadays, a manufacturing company will have more complicated processes and produce in smaller production runs as they're customizing their output to their unique customer requirements, and they're following the principles of pull production or just-in-time. In this modern environment, the indirect costs, these are the costs that are difficult to trace to cost units. These will be significant and will depend upon the activities that are performed during production. In such an environment, using the incremental approach, well, this will result in a budget that's of limited use for cost control, as it's likely to be inaccurate. Enter activity-based budgeting. If we follow this approach, we recognize that production creates a demand for activities, and it's these activities that drive our indirect costs. So if we'd like to forecast these costs for a future period, it will be helpful to understand what activities will be required for a given budgeted production level. If you think this sounds like activity-based costing, you are right. Activity-based budgeting is essentially ABC in reverse. And when you encounter an ABB question in your exam, the approach to solving it is similar to that you'd use in solving an ABC question. ABB will be appropriate for our business when we have high overheads, when we're performing a wide range of activities, and we're producing many products, often customized to our customer requirements. These are the steps we'd follow to prepare an activity-based budget. First, we'd estimate our production and our sales levels. Based on this, we'd then estimate the required number of activities to support both production and sales. Once we understand the activities we'll need to perform, then we can determine a cost per driver or cost per activity. Based on this, we can finally calculate a budgeted cost per activity by multiplying the estimated required number of activities by that cost per activity. Let's look at a practice question now to understand more. Here we have an ABB question that's similar to one you might face in your upcoming PM exam. We have the Amalfa company, and they manufacture a range of industrial products. So right away we see that ABB might be appropriate for this company. And the budgeted costs of the maintenance section, or the maintenance department, for the current 12-month period have been analyzed as follows. So we have a total cost for this department, 193. And we see that this total cost is made up of two items. We've got maintenance. So we have one activity, maintenance, and production line setup. That's the second activity, setting up the production runs and then maintaining the equipment. And we've got a cost for each item that total $193,000. So we see a company that's using activity-based budgeting. And this budget was prepared on the basis that there will be 720 setups, So we could put a 720 here for the setups, and 10,080 machine hours will be worked. So we could then assume that it's the machine hours that's driving the maintenance costs. And we can put a 10,080 there. Now, here is the ask. How much should be included in the cost of the order in respect to maintenance costs? At this point, why don't you pause the video and see if you can do this question on your own. Welcome back. To solve this question, I'm going to reverse engineer the activity-based budgeting process. We're talking about maintenance costs, and we see that the maintenance department has two activities happening: maintaining the machines and setting up the production runs. And each line has its own cost pool. So RM for routine maintenance, we've got 151,000, and setups we see 42,000. And we found that there will be 720 setups, and that the machines will operate for 10,080 hours in this period. So if we divide those total costs by the number of drivers, we'll get a cost per driver, which we could then apply to this inquiry and arrive at a maintenance cost for this order. We'll divide the maintenance costs by the total number of hours. We will divide the setups by the number of setups. That will give us a cost per driver. Once we have that information, we can multiply the cost per drivers by the activities that will be consumed to produce this order. So the maintenance will be running the machines for 56 hours, and we will need 3 setups. We put these numbers into our calculator, and we determine that the maintenance costs will be $839, and the setup costs will be $175. We can add those up, and we get 1,014. The total cost for maintenance for this special order. So the answer, guys, is answer B. Again, if you thought this question was quite similar to an activity-based costing question, you are correct. The techniques that we use are similar for solving both types of problem. Let's look at the pros and cons of activity-based budgeting when we compare it to traditional budgeting. Well, if we look at the pros, we can say that ABB puts our focus on activities. So we are drilling down into our processes, and we are understanding what it is that we do that's driving our costs. With this information, we can now control our costs more effectively, and we can even reduce our costs by finding the non-value adding activities, and we can then remove those from our processes. This is going to lead to more efficiency and improved production in our organization. However, implementing ABB can be complicated. We'll need to gather a lot more information, much of it non-financial in nature. For example, the number of setups, the number of material movements, and our accounting systems will probably need to be updated to store and deal with this new information. This means ABB will be more expensive than traditional budgeting. It takes more work to prepare an ABB. We'll also need new specialists in our finance department, and the switch from traditional to ABB, we might actually need to hire some consultants to help us with that process. PM team, that wraps up our explainer video for activity-based budgeting. I hope it makes more sense now. I will see you in our next video.